Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome your faces to another Little Nightmares 2 video. Today I have something a little bit special for you, and I'm going to assume most of you know what it is just from the title of the video. So I managed to get Lucas Russell to answer a few questions that I have about Little Nightmares, and a few questions from a few other creators in the Little Nightmares community. And before we get into this, I just want to say a big thank you to Lucas Russell for taking the time to answer some of these questions that we have. I really appreciate it. I think everyone else appreciates it as well, and just so thankful for it. So once again, thank you, Lucas Russell. But with that being said, let's get straight into those questions. And obviously, if you haven't already, hit subscribe if you enjoy the Little Nightmares content. Let me know in the comments below. Now, I've sent Lucas Russell a few questions, and of course, because it was an email, I will voice over the back and forth. So apologies on that front. But let's get into the questions. So the first question that I asked was, how has the development of Little Nightmares 2 been? Were there any lows, highs, and obstacles you had to face while developing? I can imagine with COVID it made things quite difficult. And Mr. Russell said this: it has been challenging, as any game development I guess. There were known risks and obstacles that we did not see coming. But the most important is that we did not change our vision. We wanted to create a bigger and more ambitious sequel. AI companion, combat system, new unique monsters, outdoor environments, etc. Despite our challenges, we released the game with all the features that we originally planned, and this was very rewarding. COVID was slightly troublesome, like for any production, but we had the chance of being well advanced when it struck us, which means more in the execution phase rather than the concept phase where you need a lot of iteration and communication. So it did slightly delay us, but not as much as other games. The next question that I asked was, how long did it take to fully develop Little Nightmares 2 from concept to release? And Mr. Russell responded, our first discussions about Little Nightmares 2 happened when we wrapped up the first game, so it took about 3.5 years in total. And my next question for Mr. Russell was, what was the largest technical challenge you faced while developing Little Nightmares 2? To which Mr. Russell responded, 6's AI was surely a tremendous challenge. There are not so many games with an AI companion for some reasons. You need a robust AI, but this AI should look human, which is the most difficult to achieve. She should subtly hint the player, but not solve the puzzles for them. She must remain faithful to her original personality from Little Nightmares 1. She should not be a burden to the player in terms of collision and progression. There was a lot of pressure on the AI team. Was there a certain game mechanic that you and the team went back and forth on a lot? If so, could you share that? Probably combat, as we wanted to bring that feature into the game but remain faithful to our original experience, which is to feel as a small child in a dangerous world. We wanted to avoid the player to feel suddenly too much empowered and wielding weapons frantically. So we used oversized weapons to remain consistent to the feeling that you have when playing in this world, and this is naturally quite slow to swing and attack, with little margin for error. We tried different animation speeds, force feedbacks, etc., but this is what we felt was feeling better for our game. My next question was there a game mechanic that you and the team wanted to include but couldn't do so in the final release? And Lucas Russell responded, none. We have included everything we originally wanted. When we faced some production delays, we decided to give more time to the team rather than cutting features, and we are very happy about the reception of the game, so we think it was the right decision. My next question was, how much of a large nightmare was it to develop the teacher and her neck mechanic? To which Mr. Russell responded, you should ask the animator in charge of the teacher. But it was challenging, of course. The basic mechanics and animations were not so technically complex to develop, but she had to adapt to the level design of the rooms, and we had to adapt the level design of the rooms to her as well sometimes. The most complex issue was likely how to properly detect any obstacle between the teacher and the player when she was attacking to avoid any major clipping from her head and neck. We had to restrict her locomotion a bit and make her more animation driven to deliver the best experience. My next question for Mr. Russell was, so we can see from the concept art that there were a few monsters that didn't make it to the final cut, for instance the barber and the baker, as the community has dubbed them. Can you tell us a little bit more information regarding these characters and why they were cut? To which Mr. Rasal responded, "This is part of the natural iteration process where you need to ensure that all the characters will fit into the narration and have a strong gameplay proposal. If those have not been used, it's for one of those reasons. However, the concepts were polished enough to include them in the art book. It does not mean that they will never appear in a Little Nightmares game or other content, but it does not mean either that they will either." You know Lucas knows it hurts us when he puts a ha-ha in brackets at the end of that answer as well. I'll tell you, it kills me. On to the next question. I don't know why I was so dead set on cut characters, but for some reason I asked again, was there a certain character that you wanted to include but couldn't in the final release? And Mr. Rasal responded with, nope, at least not any important character. And the next question I asked Mr. Rasal, has the story of Little Nightmares changed over the course of its release at any point? Or has it all been decided from the start? To which Mr. Rasal responded, there have been very few changes since the original plot. The structure of the game has changed a bit as part of the iteration process, but the original story remained. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you knew I had to get a theorizing question in there somewhere. So I asked Mr. Rasal, theorizing is a huge thing in the Little Nightmares community. Are there any theories you have seen that are correct or have come close to being correct? And Mr. Rasal responded, we've seen a lot, and a lot of them are really interesting. Some are close to our intentions, some aren't. But we won't reveal which ones. What really matters to us is that people keep a strong interest and engagement in the franchise and have fun talking about it. Note to self, I have to go back to the drawing board from the original now and try and go over again. And it was at this point I asked fellow YouTubers Super Horror Bro and the GamingBeaver if they had any questions for Lucas Rasal, and so they did. So here are those questions. So Super Horror Bro asks, were there any big changes when Little Nightmares 2 was in development? And Mr. Rasal responded, not big changes such as we decided to cut features or replace it with a feature. It is more that we had to adapt to deliver the features we wanted to make. Change the team's organisation, the tools, adapt to the schedule, the workflows, etc. And on to the next question from the GamingBeaver, where he asks, what can we expect from the future of Little Nightmares? And Mr. Rasal responds, hopefully a lot of things, but there is not much we can reveal today, except that we're working hard to create the best next-gen version possible. Stay tuned. Oh, I love it. Gets me all giddy. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There are all the questions that I got to ask Mr. Rasal. And once more, I will greatly show my appreciation to Mr. Rasal for doing this. Absolute gem. We can't thank you enough. And I'd also like to thank Super Horror Bro and the GamingBeaver for throwing their questions in as well. Really appreciate it, guys. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you've got any questions you would ask Mr. Rasal. Because, hey, you never know. Maybe he might be up for another round of interviews at some point in time. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, thank you to Mr. Rasal for answering these questions that we have for him today. Thank you to the Super Horror Bro. Thank you to the GamingBeaver for their extra questions again. But with that being said, I wish you the best morning, day, or night, wherever you are in the world. Stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next theory video.